In the Perspectrum podcast, we discuss controversial topics. Outside of this context, Michael and I are both working professionals. While doing the show, we are not acting as agents or representatives of our respective institutions, and none of the views that we express reflect the outlooks of our employers. So don't come to my office and throw toilet paper at me.
And I don't have an office, but don't come to my cube. Hello and welcome to the Perspectrum. I'm Michael Bloom.
And I'm Nathan Seelove.
Tonight, we have a great episode.
Yes, we do.
Finally, we can call on Kamala Harris to drop out of the race. Because after that debate performance, my God. Yes, so tonight we are dedicating the whole episode to a debate breakdown. So we'll just go straight through talking about the debate, which happened just last night at the time of recording between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm excited because this isn't a raw reaction the way that the last one was. I have actually had some time to read some of the breakdown, and I think that my reaction has kind of shifted a little bit after reading some of the breakdown. Like, not dramatically, but I think I kind of have two overall takeaways. One is kind of my own personal view on it, and one is kind of my view of how the average everyday voter is going to view it.
Interesting. My view has also shifted a little bit, not necessarily as a reaction to like additional coverage, but mostly just like continuing to mull it over. So I'd be interested to see, where we end up. So, as we mentioned last night, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, face off. It's the first debate between those two, the first debate between the second presidential debate of the cycle. It was on ABC. It was moderated by David Muir and Lindsay Davis. And, typical kind of 90-minute debate, at least typical in that regard. A couple minutes for a response to each question, a minute to as like a follow-up. No audience like the first debate, and mics were muted when the person was not supposed to be talking. Although if they, were pushy enough, they would turn the mics back on as a way to like indicate that they were being pushy. One thing format-wise that I thought was way better this time than last time was almost the whole debate was a split screen on both of their faces. Yeah. So if someone was talking off mic, you could see. So, there were times when someone was talking off mic, you couldn't hear them, but you could see it was happening. And so when the other person responded to that, you knew that they weren't just being a weird, crazy person, and it didn't come off so strange.
Yeah, no, I get that. Also, the fact that it was split screen for most of it also meant that you got to see some of the nonverbal reactions.
Totally.
Which I think in terms of the nonverbal reactions, if you only judged it based on that, there was a clear winner.
Oh, absolutely. The American people. Yeah, totally. So, why don't we start with some of our takeaways, and then we can maybe get into kind of some of the key points.
So I have two key takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is from my point of view, and the second one is from the point of view of the average voter.
Okay.
From my point of view, it was decent. It was pretty good. From my point of view, I like the fact that very frequently she would take things back to policy, that she would bait Trump on going off on babbling rants, let him look like an idiot, let him not answer the question, and when it went back to her, she would kind of swat whatever he set aside and then bring things back to policy, and she did that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was smart, and that is something that definitely appealed to me. I will say that I'm still annoyed with the fact that she continues to be really basically Biden on Gaza.
Yep. And Republicans on immigration.
And Republican on immigration. That's the thing. The thing is, and this debate basically captured my entire point behind why that's a stupid fucking strategy.
Yeah.
Because she can say all she wants. No, I'm not going to take weapons away from Israel. We're still going to send them weapons, and yes, she'll give that modest criticism of like, oh, well, the way that they do this, the way they go about it is important, and they should be trying to minimize casualties. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, but you're the one who's selling them the weapons that they're not using to minimize the casualties. Yeah. You're pretending like you have no agency in this. And I'm sure that we'll talk about this more when we get into some of the more key moments. Yep. But then it goes back to Trump, and he says, you hate Israel. He just says you hate Israel anyway.
And then he says you also hate Arab people. It was like,
yeah, what the fuck? What the fuck? Yeah. And then on immigration, you can say like, yeah, I supported this bill, which was basically just a fucking Republican bill. Mm-hmm. I support what Biden did, where he limited the amount of asylum seekers that are allowed to come to the country, which those aren't even like undocumented immigrants. Asylum seeking is a fucking right under international law.
Totally.
Like you're straight up just violating international law. And the border bill, like that partially funded Trump's wall. Mm-hmm. Apparently, the Democratic position is now pro-wall, a position that used to be considered basically so fucking stupid that it was the straw man that Democrats would use against Republicans. Like, that used to be the straw man argument. Mm-hmm. Then it was the Republican argument, and now it's the fucking Democrat argument.
Yeah, so that's like the worst case of like regression in the Overton window that I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how much of a fucking hawk you are on the border, because Trump is going to say that you're for open borders anyway. Mm-hmm. It doesn't fucking matter. So you might as well make the affirmative case instead of trying to out-Trump Trump on the border. You're not going to out-Trump Trump. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, totally.
So that's from my point of view. Well, that's my take.
Yeah.
But my take from the point of view of the average voter mm-hmm. is, in even both of those cases that I mentioned, she represented a very clear weak spot.
Yeah.
And Trump could have come in and been like, oh, well, you're weak, like you're weak on the issue of Israel and Gaza. If I went in there, I would be able to negotiate a deal. Like there's no fucking way he'd be able to, but he could say that. But he didn't.
Totally. Yeah.
Or he could have answered the question about like, why is it that you have them kill the immigration bill? But he didn't. Instead, he took the bait on the whole crowd size thing, which I'm sure that we'll get to.
Yeah.
And so because of how much he fucked up in his responses to that, I think that from the point of view of the average voter, this was a fucking slam dunk for Kamala. Like, from my point of view, she did all right. Mm-hmm. I think from the point of view of kind of the average voter, like, this is a fucking slam dunk.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear more about your take that she did all right. And specifically from the angle of, like, what we think her goal should be in the debate. Because, like, from my perspective, I think I have a similar but slightly different take, which is, like, did I get all the policy answers that I would want? No. Yeah. Did she have all the policy decisions that I would want? No. Do I think that there are stronger answers on particularly the couple points that you mentioned on Gaza and immigration, which I think are her weakest points, partially because, like, it just feels manifestly clear that we have better answers.
Yeah.
But I think, like, she did exactly what she needed to do in this debate, which was, like, rise above, be the adult in the room. Like, to me, as I look back on it, it almost felt like she was, like, if you just strung together all of her answers, it could be a policy speech, just boom to boom to boom to boom, and it could be a contrast speech. Like, it would just be a speech. And so it sounded like her giving, like, a speech with a child throwing a tantrum next to her that got to interrupt after every paragraph. And, like, that just, so it really felt like she really executed on the thing she was trying to execute on and she needed to execute on. But I totally agree. Predictable weakness on, like, a couple of those answers for sure.
And so I think that it's also possible that in some ways I might have even overcorrected, because I knew that I was entering it with, like, I definitely have some biases against Harris, but obviously I have more biases against Trump. So I was entering it already thinking, Trump's a fucking idiot, Trump's a fucking buffoon. And so when he acts like a fucking idiot and a fucking buffoon, lo and behold, I'm like, hey, look, there he is acting like a fucking idiot and a fucking buffoon. So, so part of my mind, I think, was almost overcorrecting, thinking, like in my attempt to try to think like a normie type American, I might have overcorrected and been more critical of Kamala. Although at the same time, having my own like critiques of Kamala because of the areas where I disagree with her. So I think it was an amalgamation of that probably leads me to like me personally to say I think she did okay. But, as I've kind of looked at it a little bit more, as I've kind of analyzed it a bit more and thought about it a bit more, I think that from the point of view of other people, it was probably a slam dunk.
Totally. Yeah, and I think she did well. I think Trump did really badly.
Yeah.
And so like there's a little bit of grading on a curve here.
Yeah.
So like when Biden was next to Trump, even though Trump seemed like an idiot, he didn't seem like he was mentally failing.
Yeah.
And like on the stage next to someone who, I don't know, knows her position in healthcare, Trump seemed not only like a babbling idiot, but also like his brain is totally pickled in like the right wing internet sphere, such that if you were a normal voter who wasn't deep in that place, you wouldn't know what he was talking about. Bree turned to me multiple times like, what was that? What did that mean? And I was like, okay, there's this thing, immigrants in Springfield.
I hadn't even heard of that. I hadn't even heard of that.
I had heard about it on the podcast like 10 minutes before it, and I was like, what? And the podcast literally predicted that he would bring it up.
God. But I think you're right. Like he was trying to be like I think he has advisors that some of which are giving him good advice where they're saying, focus on policy. Although interestingly enough, even if he did focus on policy, his policies aren't popular.
And they largely don't exist.
Yeah.
Like that was something that was a bit of a criticism I had on Kamala, because so let's jump to the Project 2025 for a second. So basically at one point Kamala brought up Project 2025, doing the thing that we would expect her to do, which is lay it at Trump's feet as his policy agenda. Trump did the thing which he has started to do in recent weeks, which is be like, that's not my plan. I don't even know what Project 2025 is. I don't know, like I haven't read it. It's unaffiliated, blah, blah, blah. One, if you're a voter, you could take that at face value. But two, if you're not familiar with Project 2025, it doesn't really land. So like Kamala, I think, did a pretty good job describing some of the key things that were in Project 2025 that are scary. I think she could have done a better job holding him to it, because a natural response to 2025 is not my policy agenda is like, then what is? Because he doesn't have a platform. Like, what's your policy on healthcare? Like, all you've talked about is some tariffs. Like, what are your policies on all of these things? Because all you've said is, like, I'm not going to commit to do anything specific on abortion. I'm not going to commit to do anything specific on Project 2025. I have no plan for healthcare. Yeah. All I'm going to do is close the border and slap a tariff on foreign goods. And so I feel like that's a way that she could be like, well, you're either unprepared or it's Project 2025.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would have been a good answer. I also think it would have been a good answer to point out how many former Trump staffers wrote Project 2025. The fact that his vice presidential pick wrote the foreword for one of the architects of 2025.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think Tim Walz has a really good line on this that he's always saying, which is, if you make a playbook, you're gonna use it.
Sure.
So totally. I think she could have done it, and that's actually a theme of what or even calling out that Schedule F was already something that's in Project 25 and 2025, and he also already passed. Yeah. Like there's a direct policy thing that he tried to that he implemented successfully in this policy proposal. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No. That's absolutely true. So like I think that also kind of emphasizes one of the things that did annoy me most about Harris, which is I feel like her advisors told her to not spend too much time fact-checking Trump. And I just think that was a bad idea. I think that she needed to spend more time swatting aside bullshit that he said. And the few times that she did do it, it landed extremely well. Like when she very quickly said, like, you know, I'm not planning on taking your guns. Me and Walzer, we're both gun owners. Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
That
Interesting.
I think she needed to do more of that.
Yeah.
And it annoyed me that there were so many just blatant lies that just were able to stand because she didn't acknowledge them. Now, some of them she acknowledged non-verbally. And I think there were some that she probably didn't even need to dignify with a response. She could just laugh and be like, look at this fucking weirdo.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's a good model for it, what you described, which is like identify it as false, dismiss it quickly as like, we're not going to take your guns. Walls and I are both gun owners. One sentence or two sentences in that case, like dismisses it, enables you to be like, this guy's a buffoon. He's not a serious character. He's not really a legitimate option for a president. And then pivot to whatever I want to talk about. But I think that's an interesting point because I feel like a lot of people. So when I was watching it, I was happy that she didn't get bogged down in trying to have a debate over a minutia with Trump. One of the notes that I was taking as I was going through was like, I'm glad that she wasn't like getting into just a tit for tat battle over like whether, you know, your crowd size is bigger or this crowd size or like the number of people that, because like in that case, it just ends up looking like a matter of opinion and not. Like,
well, that she didn't need to, like that. God, let's talk about that moment for a second. I could see the gears turning in both of their heads during this moment. Like, so she makes the point. She's saying like, I'm imploring you to go to a Trump rally, and I'm thinking, where is she going with this?
Where is she going?
And then she says, you know, oh, you'll see some people leave because they got bored, and I was like, oh, that's where she's going with this.
Yeah. Oh, she was throwing a grenade into the room.
And the thing is, as soon as she said that, I looked over at Trump, and I was like, you idiot, you're going to take the bait. You're going to take the bait.
He's going to
because people
that was the thing.
People are turned off by that. The fact that he has this weird obsession with crowd size, people are turned off by that. And the thing is, it was brilliant because the next question was about immigration. And the thing is, Harris knows that is her weakest, like that is her weakest point.
Yes.
You know, not just like, and I'm not just saying that because I disagree with her policy on immigration because it's too right wing. I'm saying that because the country, for whatever reason, because I would say not for whatever reason, because Democrats are horrible at making an affirmative case on immigration. The country trusts Trump more on the border. So when he is talking, oftentimes when he's talking about immigration, unless he, you know, takes it to the extreme like he did with the whole dogs thing, which is another thing. But like when he is talking about immigration, that is an area in which he might be able to make some decent attacks. But instead of that, the next question about the immigration law that he helped kill, that he wasn't able to explain, number one, because he didn't address it, it stood as a point. But number two, he uses it as an opportunity to fucking brag about crowd sizes. It was a brilliant moment. And as soon as he started saying it, you could see Kamala just like smirking, like, got him.
That's the thing. She just, that's one of the reasons why, like, the more I've thought about it, the actual, like, the better I think she did at debating Trump. Like, again, maybe she didn't roll out any, like, crazy policy, like not crazy policy, but, like, significant policy proposals or anything like that. But again, I think that like is putting a target on your back in a way. It's like inviting people to challenge you. Whereas like if your goal of this debate was to beat Trump and make him look dumb and make him angry and flustered and a mess, slam dunk. Because she was laying traps left and right for him. And even from the very beginning, her contrast message is all about like so she gets like an initial question, right at the beginning of the debate. And as typical, like the question is a real question, but she just uses it as kind of an opening statement, right? And she pivots to a contrast message with Trump, with Trump in like the first couple questions of the debate, where she frames him as like this divisive character who's going to say a lot of lies. She literally said like, you're going to see a lot of these things in the debate, and like he's going to lie, he's going to be like divisive, he's going to be angry, and you're not going to hear him talk about what he's going to do for you. And what it basically did was set him up set the audience up to see him in that
Yeah.
frame. And it did it so effectively.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, look, there's a lie. Oh yeah, he's not talking about the American people and what he's going to do for them. And so like it was such an effective way to just set up the whole thing for him to just check all those boxes because we've been primed to look for those things.
Well, and also like what I was kind of alluding to earlier, he has advisors that are telling him to talk about policy, and he has advisors that are like basically have brain worms that they got that they caught from the internet, like the internet brain worms that are just completely
so not RFK,
not RFK. So I wasn't referring to
different kind of brain
different. Yeah, I forgot that RFK is a part of his campaign now.
There's multiple brain worms are at work in the Trump campaign.
Yeah. But like there's this online right wing circle that a bunch of his advisors, a bunch of the people that have his ear, are completely immersed in. And the thing is, we saw him take both of those pieces of advice at different parts of the debate. More so he was taking the latter than the former. But even when he was taking the advice, talking about policy, he was flailing, because the one policy that he did talk about of his was the tariffs. And as he was talking about the tariffs, he made it clear he doesn't fucking know how a tariff works.
Yes, exactly.
Like, he was trying to say that this is going to raise a bunch of revenue for us. Here's the thing. I was talking to my dad about this earlier, and he made a really good point. Like, the point of a tariff is to incentivize domestic businesses to buy domestically. Like, that is the point of it. That is the point of it. It is a tax that is levied on the importers, not the exporters. He seems to think it's on the exporters.
Other countries are going to pay.
No, it is levied on the importers. Now, what that sometimes means is that the importers might raise prices on the exporters, so the exporters might end up, having to pay more money. But the people that actually pay the taxes are the importers. And here's the thing. If it raises revenue, that means that people are still buying foreign.
Yeah.
So if it actually raises revenue, that means that the tariff isn't working.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Either the tariff raises revenue, which means it's not working, or it doesn't raise revenue, in which case it will raise the prices on everything anyway.
Totally. And in no case is China paying more unless a lot of things go right in the market for that to happen.
Exactly. So the dude doesn't fucking understand how tariffs work. And I think that it's brilliant to frame it as a sales tax, because effectively that's what it is. Like, it is going to raise the prices on the consumers, because when the importers have to pay more, they're going to pass that cost on to the consumers, which is going to further raise grocery prices. Whereas Kamala Harris, on the other hand, she has an actual plan to address price gouging.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Targeting it at the source, which Trump has called that plan communist. Trump has called that plan communist. He is pro-price gouging.
Well, that's the thing, Nathan. He's only interested in price setting when the government does it by increasing prices for importers.
Yeah. Well, and it's not even price setting. Like, that's the other thing. There's a major difference between price setting and having laws against price gouging. A lot of states have laws against price gouging, like for a natural disaster, where if a hurricane comes in and destroys all of the supermarkets in the area, that the one that survives can't jack up the prices and sell you a bottle of water for $100. There are laws against that, and I think that it makes sense to apply that same logic to something like a global pandemic, and to say that you can't use the global pandemic, all of the media hysteria from the global pandemic, in order to raise prices and increase your profit. So we're going to pass laws against that price gouging, but Trump calls that communist. So to be clear, tariffs are going to increase inflation. Anti-price gouging crackdowns are going to decrease inflation. So if you like inflation, vote for Trump.
Yep. I was just thinking about this. So we know tariffs. That's a policy thing that Trump has said that he's going to do. Yeah. In the whole of the debate, was there any other thing that he said he was going to do?
Nope. And that actually that right there kind of there's a key moment in the debate that I think is probably going to go down in debate history, where he is asked about his healthcare plan.
And
oh
my
says,
God, I love this.
And they're like, do you have a plan? He's like, I have the concept of a plan.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, I'm not president. It's like, but you're running for president. You're running for president.
I know. And
you should
not
have
only
a
you're
plan.
running for president, you've had 9 fucking years. Like,
yeah.
It's, like since 2016, you've had, even before
let's
that,
not
to come up with a
forget,
plan.
let's not forget Trump Care. All right. When he attempted to pass his own version of, of repealing the Affordable Care Act, which he attempted to do several times, which is, as Harris pointed out in the debate, it was only saved because John McCain came out and did that famous thumbs down moment. He tried to get rid of Obamacare, and like he's pretending like, I saved Obamacare. Okay, I didn't have to save Obamacare, but I did because I was doing what was best for the country. Motherfucker, you tried to repeal it like 100 times. And the thing is, it was so unpopular that there were these moderate Republican senators whose phones were being flooded by calls from people saying, for the love of God, please don't take away my health care. And now, after all of this time, when that first plan was a complete flop, you are asked, do you have another plan now? And your answer is, I have the concept of a plan.
Yeah, like, totally.
That
literally,
moment right there.
Yeah, literally, he was like, if we can figure out a plan, we're going to have one. If we can figure out a plan that increases quality and lowers costs, we'll have a plan that increases quality and lowers costs.
like that right there. I've literally had, that's the type of excuse that I get from my students.
Yeah.
Like when I've assigned a paper and a student comes to me for help and I'm like, okay, so do you have a plan for how you're going to do it? They're like, oh, I have a concept of a plan.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, like, if let's say we're living a crazy world where Kamala Harris, for example, didn't have a healthcare plan at all, or and was asked this question. If you know anything about the various plans that are in the zeitgeist and are available, then you could name one. Like, you could, if you wanted, and you were as irresponsible as Donald Trump, you could just pick one and see what happens then, and be like, we're thinking of a plan like X. Like, I mean, that's the thing about like your comment about like how a students might respond. It's worse than that, because a student would not be like, I want to have the concept of the plan. They're like, yes, and I am coming up with it right now as I am telling you. Like, they would at least vamp. And he was just like, we're going to have one, and you're going to see it, and we're going to come up with it, and it's going to be better. But that's the thing. Every single answer that he had was about results and not about how to implement them. We're going to close the border. We're going to end the war in Ukraine. We're going to end the war between Israel and Hamas. We're going to like lower the price of healthcare. We're going to protect, IVF. We're going to be super pro-abortion or pro-life, but also somehow the best for women's reproductive rights. Somehow we're going to return it to the states, but also be the best administration for women's reproductive health. Like, it is all just a wish list of outcomes. And I think Harris did a good job of pointing out the weakness of those things and criticizing them and pointing out like how that's all just lies and fake and stuff. But then contrasting that to what she would actually implement. I think one of the best moments was early on in the debate when they were on the topic of abortion. So Trump was asked this question, basically like, you've said, Mr. Trump, that you're going to be, you're the most pro-life president in history, but you're also going to be the best for women's reproductive rights. And then you came out against the 6-week ban, and then you switched to supporting the 6-week ban in Florida. And like how can the voters trust you on reproductive rights, right? And so he gives a total bullshit answer that's just pivoting to the same old bullshit claim that he makes all the time, that Democrats are going to kill babies right after they're born.
But real quick, I want to talk about that point real, because this is something that keeps getting brought up over and over again. And first off, like, it was a lie, but he was also too dumb to be able to even get the facts right in his lie. He said it was the governor of West Virginia.
Not yeah, totally, and not the current one, the former one. And it's like, no.
Yeah, he was talking about the governor of Virginia. He was talking about this clip of Ralph Northam where he was talking about, because he used to be a doctor. He was talking about instances where a baby is born that is incompatible with life, and he was just talking about like do not resuscitates, like not resuscitating a baby where they're incompatible with life, like they're born without a brain, or they're like that's what he was talking about. It was
is
do
that
not
a real
resuscitate
phrase, incompatible with life, or is that just something you said?
I'm pretty sure that's a phrase that's been used.
Wow. I'm not challenging you. I'm only asking because if that's a real phrase, that's like the most euphemistic thing I've ever heard. Like, this baby can't equal life.
Well,
doesn't work.
As in, like, they're not going to be able to survive.
They're not going to survive. Yeah,
you know. So like, you know, it makes sense to have a do not resuscitate, like to have a do not resuscitate order on that. And that's what he was talking about. And at the time, a bunch of fucking idiotic right-wing trolls spread that around, took it out of context, and pretended like the Democratic position is now killing babies after they were born, which is such fucking bullshit. And the thing is, it is such a specific thing that happened a long time ago that I can guarantee you the normie person saw that and was like, what the fuck is this guy babbling about? Exactly. And then the moderator even had to step in and be like, there's killing a baby after birth is legal in no states. And the thing is, what's funny is like a bunch of right-wingers online were pissed off about how the moderators would occasionally fact check the guy. But the thing is, the only times that they stepped in to fact check him, which by the way, I think they should have done it more because he made some horrifically egregious lies. But the few times that he did, it was so fucking ridiculous that you should whenever any right winger complains like, oh, they were fact checking him in the middle of the debate, you should ask, on what did he say, and force them to say it and force them to defend it.
Sure.
Like, force them to defend it. It's like, well, he was fact-checking them on Democrats being okay with killing babies after they're born. Oh, and you think that's true? Like, force them to defend it. You know, move. So and then then he goes off on this bullshit tangent about, everybody wanted me to overturn Roe versus Wade. Literally, like, I'm pretty sure that polls at like 19%.
Totally. And he keeps like citing like all legal scholars think we should overturn.
No, they don't.
And like, one, no, they don't. But also two, who gives a flying fuck? Like, no one fucking cares about the opinion of like a fucking couple legal scholars. Like, no average American cares about that. They care about the impact that this has on people's lives.
Yeah. And then Harris's response, oh my God.
Which is why Harris's response was so good. It was in my opinion, the best prosecution of the pro-choice case I think I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And partially it's because Trump is because all of these states are making it illegal, we're actually seeing the day-to-day impact of banning abortion on these things. And she was so effectively able to lay that all at Trump's feet. And
he had no response.
Of course he didn't, because his whole thing is like, hey, we put it to the states, and she very effectively was like, yeah, you did. Putting it to the states means that all of these terrible outcomes happen. She talked about people having a miscarriage and bleeding out in their car, and 13-year-olds like who are victims of incest being forced to carry babies to term, and people that are working multiple jobs and can't afford to raise another child, having to cross state lines for basic health care. And she just did such a good job making that case and not getting caught up in like the red herrings and not getting like pulled into the debate about Roe itself, but made the affirmative case for choice in a way that I haven't seen like a Democratic politician successfully do in a really long time. And it was awesome, especially thinking about the same lie that Trump is making, the same lies that he always has. And so he said that same lie against Biden, and Biden didn't. Yeah. He couldn't make the case, and seeing Kamala do it was awesome.
No, because remember, that was that led to the famous moment where Biden was like, we finally defeated Medicare, or like we beat Medicare, or whatever the fuck. The one line that I think that she should have used, like, like, I'm not saying that her answer wasn't like really good, like that it didn't lambaste Trump. The one line that I think Democrats need to start using is something along something like this: my opponent believes it should be left up to the states. I believe it should be left up to the women.
Ooh, nice. I like that. I really like that, because that is the contrast. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what,
and
that's the one thing I would have added.
Yeah, totally. I think that's great. And it's actually an even better like small government argument. It's like, actually, we want the government out of your reproductive health care.
Yeah. Otherwise, I thought it was I thought that was probably her best moment in the entire debate.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's totally right.
Hey,
all right.
And by the way, so Michael, next thing I wanted to ask you about. So, I assume I between some of the times that we've been recording, I've been hearing your dog barking in the background. I assume it's because an immigrant is trying to eat her.
Actually, there's a reason why she's not barking right now, is that they just got her.
They just got her.
So, yep, they just snatched her up. They're eating the pets.
And this was a part of the answer, like crowd size. It went from the bullshit about crowd size to like, they're eating your pets. And like, I look over at Kamala, she's just laughing her ass off. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So this was Trump's only, maybe not only, one of his just a couple of points that he was clearly prepared to trying to make before the debate. Like, the thing that the case he was trying to prosecute was like, Harris is part of the Biden administration, and so everything you don't like about Biden is really Harris. Harris and Biden are weak on foreign policy. They're going to get us into World War III. And Harris and Biden are bad for the economy. They're going to drive increased inflation. And then lastly, and this is the one he made most, Harris and Biden are bad on the border, and they're driving immigration, and specifically illegal immigration, and causing a crime wave in the United States. This was the one he hit most often, and the one that he was trying to make in this particular case, which was where, he was just, and that's the thing. When you make sense of it, when you like tie the story together, it sounds crazy, but it like is actually a coherent sentence. All he just did was start railing about how they're eating the pets, they're eating the dogs.
Yeah. And that was another one of the moments where the moderator's like, yeah, so we checked up on that, and no, that's not happening.
And he was like,
and
well, of course.
What? I saw some guy talk about it on TV. It's like, that's your source? That's your source?
Yeah.
Some rando on TV?
Yeah. You're trying to be president.
Oh, God.
I know. That was so funny. That was amazing. But honestly, like, good.
Yeah.
Like, that's exactly the kind of actual thing that is pickling his brain, and it's good to give him enough leash to, get caught on. Which I thought was good. We should talk a little bit about immigration, though, because I think you teed up some of those things. Let's talk about Harris a little bit and immigration. I think you made the point really like accurately. Like, Harris is progressing in a long tradition, it seems, of one, a regression on immigration, just getting worse on it, getting more conservative on it, and two, failing to make the affirmative case, and just like leaning into every single fucking like right-wing talking point and just accepting it as true, and then trying to argue why you have a slightly different policy than the Republicans on it. Like, the fact that she did, they were talking about the southern border, and she pivoted to talking about like international crime and fentanyl. I literally yelled at the TV, "You're lying," because like 90% of fentanyl comes through ports of entry. It's not being fucking muled across the fucking border in a backpack. Yeah. And so like it's just so frustrating and annoying to see that happen on the stage.
Yeah. But the thing is, there is one point that she says, which, again, this is something that pisses me off, but it makes sense to the average voter. When she makes the point that, you're complaining about us doing nothing on immigration. We tried to do something on immigration,
Yeah.
and you called up Republicans and told them to kill it. Now,
Totally.
for me, you saying that is basically, you're like, I should be thanking Trump.
Yeah,
for
that's
that.
the fourth good thing that Trump has done.
Yeah,
in
that's
his
the
political
fourth
career.
good thing. Yeah, exactly. But like for the average normie type voter, they're going to hear that and be like, well, okay, because the line that she was giving was, you want power, but you don't want to solve problems. Like you care more about having something to run on than you do about actually solving problems, which is totally true. Like that's
good
just
line.
That's who the person is, and that is a good line. That is a good
And it fits
line of
right
attack.
into the Trump cares about himself and cares about power, and he doesn't care about you. It works really well.
Yeah. So it was, pissed me off on the policy substance, but I think it was a good response for in terms of optics.
Totally. And again, it puts him on the defensive. It takes the pressure off of her and allows him to just kind of run with his craziness.
One quick thing that I also wanted to mention that I thought was kind of funny. Trump out of nowhere decided to remind me of another reason why I fucking hate him. It was in the middle of it was the question about abortion when he was asked like if he would veto a law, and he was like, well, I wouldn't need to because it would never come on my desk. And he was like, just like how they were planning on having student loans and it got struck down by the Supreme Court. And I'm like, oh, thanks for reminding me of the fact that the justices that you approved, that you appointed, fucked me over on student loan forgiveness when I needed it the most because I was about to have a goddamn kid and I needed that extra money. Thank you for reminding me how much you fucked my family.
Totally. Yeah. The point that Biden and Harris really jerked people around when committing to doing this and then not being able to do it because the Supreme Court overturned it is such a weaker point than the point against him, which is like, you put the justices in place that prevented everybody from getting that relief. So the only people that shut it down were your guys, dude. Yeah. Not that Kamala made that point, but that like for people that are informed, which again that's not necessarily who this is totally for. But
let's talk about foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
I think we already talked about Gaza. Yep. It continues to be a weak point for Kamala. We talked about the polling data on this. She's literally, her position is speaking to 25% of the country.
Yeah.
Like a majority of the country either doesn't know or supports an arms embargo.
Yeah.
And you're not willing to do it.
I literally just saw an article today about a civilian camp in like a safe zone that was hit with a 2,000-pound bomb, and it killed like 16 people and injured like 60.
Yeah.
And it's just like we made the decision to start sending those again. Like those are the exact offensive, large casualty, imprecise, like aggressive military weapons that we have decided we've like literally flip-flopped. We have turned them off and turned them back on. Like we've decided to send, and it's just like this position just is stupid.
Yeah,
and it's unnuanced.
Yeah.
But
then they started talking about Ukraine, and I thought that was an interesting exchange because like twice the moderator tried to get Trump to say whether or not he was cheering for Ukraine.
No,
and he didn't say it.
Literally, the moderator was saying like, "Well, you say you're going to end the war. Do you support a Ukrainian victory?" And he would not commit to doing to that. And I thought,
and Harris, I think, had a brilliant answer when she said, basically, he says he wants to end the war. He's going to do it by giving Putin everything he wants because Putin said nice things about him.
Totally.
And the whole these strong men, these so-called strong men, can manipulate you and do whatever you and make you do whatever they want because all they need to do is say nice things to you and you'll bend over backwards. And his response was basically like, hold on, I'm best friends with Erdogan.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh. So you're bragging, your character reference is literally a fucking fascist.
No, totally.
An authoritarian fascist. that's your character reference.
Yeah,
it's like you just
Orban.
made her
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think she did. So yeah, Trump and Kamala kind of exchanged this thing back and forth. I shouldn't actually frame it that way exactly. Kamala would make proactive foreign policy points, and Trump would be like, you guys are weak, and other countries think you're weak, and they're laughing at you, and they think you're dumb. And he tried to make that point a few times. And I think that what you said, and Kamala's point, did a great job of turning that dynamic on its head and being like, yeah, they're not laughing at you to your face, dude, because they can manipulate you because you're an idiot. Because all you care about is vanity. And it was like, boy, that really cuts deep. That's just so clearly true, and it feels true. And so I thought it was really effective. And yeah, it definitely didn't help that all of his, to your point, character references were like strongmen and fascists and like and all that. Also, I just love the moment when yet again he proves that he has no fucking idea how NATO works.
Yeah.
Like when he keeps bragging about, like, I got them to pay, and it's like, no one pays, dude. No one pays. It's not, it's literally a commitment to invest in their own military. No one pays.
Yeah.
I just love that.
Yeah. The guy doesn't understand foreign policy. The one thing that I will say that, at one point Kamala said this, and, to me, this moment was unforgivable. And maybe for other people, like this wasn't a stuck moment. Maybe for the normie type, this isn't a stuck moment. But the moment where she bragged about getting Dick Cheney's endorsement.
Yeah. I was like, just name anyone else. Just all the other 200 people. Anybody else.
Just don't. Like, just come. And the thing is, when Dick Cheney first came out, I was like, dude, shut up.
Yeah,
don't.
Exactly.
Just
that's not
stay
for
out of
anyone.
this. Stay out of this.
There's no upside to that.
I don't know if you saw Jon Stewart's reaction to the debate yet, but like he reacted to the Dick Cheney to the Dick Cheney endorsement by basically showing the clip from Monty Python's Meaning of Life of like the really fat guy throwing up in a bucket. And I was like, yep, that about sums it up. That about sums it up. And he just kept saying, dude, fuck off. And I'm like, yeah, no, dude, fuck off. And Harris, honestly, if she had any, like, if she had political sense in that moment, she would have been like, you know what? You can vote for whoever you want, Dick Cheney, but I, for one, am not going to tout the fact that a fucking war criminal like you, a torturer, someone who should be in prison.
Yeah. Someone who
I'm not going to tout that
defrauded the American people.
Like someone who lied us into a war against a country that didn't attack us. That contributed to the mass slaughter of hundreds of thousands of civilians in that country.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry. Dick Cheney is quite possibly the biggest villain of our era, maybe second to Henry Kissinger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like
may he rest in hell. Yeah.
I
totally agree.
I'm sorry, Kamala. I know that you're trying to be a big tent, and like there are plenty of Republican endorsements that you can tout. Like that's fine, exactly. But just not Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney.
I totally agree with you. Like if this were like, and my other point, my other point, which I kind of mentioned, was like this isn't for anybody.
Yeah.
No one is a big Dick Cheney fan. Like, it'd be one thing if it was like John McCain was alive and he gave the endorsement. He's like a classic, like
maverick
fixture, a maverick, a fixture of American politics, like super popular in his state. Like all this, there might be a reason to do that. Like Dick Cheney he's not getting a swing state. Like he's not popular anywhere. Like people would love to have forgotten that he exists. Like the only reason that Cheney is still in anybody's mouths is because of Liz Cheney, and you already got her endorsement. If you want to talk about that, talk about that. But like, why Dick Cheney?
Yeah, and honestly, when she said that, I was thinking, oh, Trump, you got to take that opportunity. You would have to be an idiot to not take this opportunity. And the thing is, like, he has been consistently against, well, not consistently, since the 2016 election, he has been consistently against the Iraq war, like saying that was a big mistake, that Bush and Cheney were idiots and horrible people. Like, if Trump had any sense, he could have had a really great moment in the debate if he had been like, yeah, of course, Dick Cheney would endorse you. He's some point about like, you both are great at fucking up the Middle East.
Yeah.
Something like that. If he had hit her on that Dick Cheney endorsement, that could have actually been a pretty good moment for him.
Yeah.
But he was too dumb to take it.
No surprise there. Okay, what about the Afghanistan exchange? So basically, Kamala Harris was asked a question from the moderators about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the exit, and whether she was responsible for any of the problems with that exit. And she basically emphasized the positive thing, which is that we're out of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And that lots of presidents committed to doing it, and that Biden actually did. And she made I think a pretty compelling point, which is that there are no active U.S. military service members engaged in a foreign conflict anywhere in the world for the first time this century. Cool point, kind of novel. It's attention getting. And then pivoted to a nice attack on Trump as the negotiator of the deal, giving like selling the farm to the Taliban and inviting the Taliban to Camp David, like all this stuff. And I think did a nice job actually pivoting to lay the problems with Afghanistan on at Trump's feet, and his incompetence and willingness to just bend the knee wherever needed to the strongman.
So I'll be honest, the attack on the negotiating with the Taliban, that didn't land as much with me. But this is one of those cases where it didn't land with me, but I think it probably landed with the normie.
Yeah.
It didn't land with me because my thought is when you are when you're president, you got to negotiate with horrible people. You got to you got to have talks with horrible people. And you're going to have diplomatic relations with people like hell, even Putin. Like you're going to have to talk to people like Putin. You're going to have to talk to people like Erdogan. So I'm not. It's a bad aesthetic, but simply having talks with a group,
of course,
to try to figure out a plan, I don't think is a bad thing. Like like for example, I wasn't one of the people that was particularly critical of the fact that he talked to Kim Jong-un. I thought like the fact that we did have a little bit more of a diplomatic relationship with Kim Jong-un was actually one of the things that Trump did like decently. I mean, obviously he had plenty of blunders and he said a lot of stupid things, and he was definitely too buddy with Kim Jong-un.
Sure.
But the fact that we suddenly had talks, I think that was a good thing. So so criticizing him simply for meeting with the Taliban, I mean, that
especially
doesn't land
they're not like just a fringe like terrorist organization in Afghanistan. Like they're a pretty powerful political organization.
The terrorist organization in Afghanistan.
They're not a rinky-dink terrorist organization. Yeah, totally. I think the thing that landed it for me was like the stat about releasing 5,000 members of the Taliban. Like it's a big number. It feels significant.
Yeah. Yeah, that I'm not as sure about. Like I think that it's one of those things that I think probably did contribute to the fact that the pullout of Afghanistan was really messy. But I do think that it is right to continue to stand by that. Yeah. By the pullout of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
But it was sloppy and it
did go poorly. Yeah. The other thing is, but I think it's also interesting to think about how much of a higher standard we hold Kamala to.
Yeah.
Even in this exchange than we hold Trump. Because we're like, yeah, she made this point, but technically there are some policy reasons why we could do better. And for Trump, we're like, well, yeah, obviously he didn't do anything. He didn't defend himself in any way. Like, he didn't know, like, he did such a terrible job responding to the question. Like, ultimately, like, if he had good reasons for releasing 5,000 members of the Taliban, maybe he should have mentioned them. So like, it's kind of I think in some of these cases we get in a little bit of a debate with ourselves because we want to hold our politicians to really high standards, but anchoring back to like, she won that.
Yeah. Oh no, she absolutely won that exchange. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, anytime you talk about foreign policy with Trump, like the guy's too stupid to know any, like to know any specifics. Like the dude, and that's the thing. This can basically be summed up by when Trump talked about policy, his idiocy came out.
Yes.
When he didn't talk about policy, his buffoonery came out.
Yes. Yeah, it's a lose-lose.
So all Harris basically needed to do was, when he was talking about policy, debunk what he was saying, which I think that she did pretty well. Like, I think when he was talking about foreign policy, I think she did a really good job of overall addressing him. Like, in comparison to him, she does a great job talking about foreign policy. Like, there are lots of disagreements that I have with her, obviously, but like in comparison to him, she's great. Yeah. When it came to talking about economic policy, tariffs, she actually has a plan to address inflation. He has a plan that will increase inflation.
Yeah, literally leading economists agree that it's going to cost people more money. So
yeah, so she did a good job with that. And when he was saying his craziest stuff, again, I think that she could have spent some more time fact-checking some of the stuff he said. But overall, there were some moments where I was thinking, I want you to say something, and then she kind of did that, like, hand on the chin smile, like, oh, okay. And I thought, you know what, that's probably all you need to do. So, like for this, that's probably like, just sit back, relax, and laugh at this guy. And the thing is, she did a great job of helping to keep the weird critique, like the critique that he is weird, fresh in people's minds. Focus, she didn't have to say it during the debate. All she had to do was sit back and make those faces at him. And I can guarantee you, like in the next, like in some of the next rallies, like her and Walz are going to be like, this is a guy who is talking about migrants eating dogs. This is what we mean when we say he's weird.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I totally agree. It's kind of remarkable. And I think to that point, I think one of the best pieces of evidence in support of that exact point, which is giving him room to make a fool of himself, is a good strategy. And then when you use your time to like hit him on some stuff, bait him up, get him revved up, and also make your policy points. Because in response to this debate, the right-wing media organism has been kind of railing against the moderators as being against Trump.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay, they fact-checked him a couple times on egregiously wrong facts. That is true. They also gave him extra time to talk regularly, more time than Kamala, to respond to points. Which on the one hand,
and
that could be sexist.
And one time that she asked for a little bit more time to respond to something, they didn't give it to her.
I know. I thought that was fucked up. Definitely a criticism of the moderators for sure.
Yeah.
But the fact that the response from the right has been the moderators were so unfair to Trump, when all they really did was give him extra time to talk, is the biggest support for your point and indictment of him that you could have. It's the more he talks, the worse he does, because he is not good at this. And he is not just not good at debating, he's not going to be a good president. And so it's worse for you guys when your candidate fucking opens his mouth.
Yeah. There's this tweet that I saw, I forget who it was from, but it was basically this debate can be summed up by The right is currently pissed off at the debate moderators for fact-checking Trump when he claimed that immigrants were eating dogs.
Yeah.
Like that can pretty much sum it up.
Yep, for sure.
So yeah, overall, I think that in the end, for me personally, I would have liked to see more substance. I didn't really learn anything new.
Yep.
But I think in terms of optics, I think in terms of undecideds, and this is something that there's some evidence to suggest. There was a CNN poll that basically said that that showed that like over 60% of people thought that Harris did better, like thought that Harris was the winner. You know, and I also watched this CNN focus group where they were asking a bunch of undecided voters, like, you know, who do you think won? And most of them were like, yeah, no, Harris won. And these were specifically undecided voters in Pennsylvania. Now it's a focus group, so, you know,
nice.
It might not be, so we don't know how representative it is, but like, I think that is probably something that's going to be reflected in the polls. I think that she's going to get a bump. I think it's going to be fairly significant. And I think that after tonight, she went from being the slight favorite to the favorite.
Totally. I think that that's totally right. I agree with every point you made. The one thing I'd add is like now, what I'm curious about now is like we see Kamala's plan and trajectory, right? Her plan is to continue to make this affirmative case for herself to the American people. Honestly, like all of her ads that I've seen after the debate they've been like, I debated Trump, now donate, as opposed to like, look at how bad this guy was. It's like almost like not even referencing it. It's just like moving on, which I think
that's because they were probably made before the debate.
Yeah, well, of course. But like, I think that's going to continue because it's like, I think she's going to keep making this affirmative case. I'm curious to see what now Trump will do because he's a bit on the back foot. And he keeps making these mistakes. He like selected J.D. Vance because he thought he was way ahead. Like the dynamics of the race changed. Vance sucks as a VP candidate. He's like, didn't do a good job in the debate. Like I think he's going to feel like he's losing ground and momentum. And he keeps making mistakes with his base as well, turning away from abortion, like trying to like be more proactive on like IVF and stuff to try to capture this middle. And I'm really curious to see where he pivots from here because like, I don't put really anything past the guy. I also don't think there's a lot of upside for him, but I'm curious to see what he tries to pull. And now it's time to end our show as we usually do with our highlights. So Nathan, what's your highlight this week?
My highlight this week is that today, for the first time, my daughter said, "Dada."
No way.
And she pointed at me.
Amazing. Holy shit, dude.
She's been saying mama for a while.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that the harder one to say too?
Normally, but you know, she's a rebel. She's a honey. Yeah. She's a honey badger. You know, honey badger don't give a shit. But today, you know, I had just finished changing her diaper. I was looking at her, and Jess was there, and she heard it too, and she said, "Dada," and she pointed at me, and I started crying.
Good for you. That is so wonderful, dude. Oh wow, that's amazing.
What about you, Michael? What's your highlight?
Oh, I mean, nothing compared to that. That's my highlight now. Jeez, I can't believe she's already doing that. That's amazing.
Like she hasn't done it since, you know. So I don't know. She's not at the point where she can. I don't know. Do it on cue.
Sure. I mean, it's only going to get more common from here. So I think.
But yeah.
Wow. That's my new highlight. That's cool. All right. And thank you to all the people that make this show possible. Thank you to our amazing patrons, Jerry DeViller, Taylor Bloom, Fade Out Scoop, Kyle Chaska, and Tobias Janssen. And thanks to our amazing editor, Kayla, for all they do to make this show possible. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to The Spectrum. And you'll hear from us again next week.